prior to his current position as Vice President Executive Coach for the Robinson Resource Group. He started his career at Arthur Young, which is now Ernst & Young, but Arthur Young, everybody in this room probably knows who Arthur Young is, unfortunately.
It looks that way.
Yeah, and then held various senior financial positions with other companies like a subsidiary of Moncero, and served as Vice President Commercial and CFO of Montero North America. So that's a little background on Ron, but I'm sure he'll expand on that and give you the floor on career transition.
All right.
Job and career transition.
Thanks, Vince. And first I want to thank everybody here for a lot of familiar faces, some new people. Always like to meet new folks, and I want to thank Vince and Jerry, the rest of the FEI leadership, and sponsors for hosting the event. And this is the inaugural one here, right?
Yeah.
I'm honored. And I've been told I can walk from here to here. I like to walk, so if I look like I just need to walk. So if I'm doing that, you'll understand why. Now, for those of you who are at the elite function, I think some of you were last November, this is going to seem a little bit like a rerun, but I would ask you to pick up things that maybe you didn't pick up the time before. Because I was asked to speak both elite and FEI. Both Vince, Jerry, and the folks at elite were saying, well, I know about coaching, but can you also bring in the whole in-transition piece? And I said, well, that makes sense. I've been in transition 4 different times, and I can speak to it. So that's what I've done. They didn't like that. Okay. So my goal is threefold here for this discussion. One is to share my experiences and perspectives about being in transition. And hopefully some of them will resonate with you in a positive or at least a humorous way. To perhaps increase your awareness of where you are and where you want and need to go, hence the title of the discussion. And finally, to suggest resources that may be a help to you. Now, I want to make this as interactive as possible, so that's why I have my note pages with me. So feel free to raise your hand, interrupt. If I don't see you, say hey, and we'll talk, because I want this to be more conversational. I'm also a firm believer in experiential learning. So in other words, we can talk about concepts here, but to anchor them in, we'll have a few exercises today. Okay? I've got them right here, and I think we'll have some fun with that. All right? And so any question before I begin? I hope that this works. I think it should.
Can I make one other comment before you begin?
You can.
Because I just forgot one thing. On each of the tables, there's sign-in sheets and evaluation forms. If you can just sign in so we have a record of who attended, and then at the end fill out the evaluations.
You can fill out the evaluations now. I think it's all 5. That's right.
How many people are thinking about it, knowing they were going to have to evaluate at the end?
That's right. That's right. So let's see. It should work, and it does. So, what are the signs, or how do you know when you're in transition? So, I remember as a CFO and a CEO, when I would call somebody, when I would send an email, I typically get a response within an hour. All of a sudden, the responses weren't so immediate, if ever, right? I used to have a place to go, an office, a team I was responsible for, and meetings to go to. All of a sudden, I had no structure. And the term I used to put to that, first time I was in transition, was I was off the merry-go-round. So, trying to jump back in, I remember saying, look, kid, I tried that once and that metal horse hit me in the face. So, I was a little reticent to try to jump on real quick. So, with all that, sometimes negative thoughts can seep in. Am I still relevant? Do I still have what it takes? My goodness, there's a lot of people out there looking for work. There's a lot of people with great skill sets. Do I have those skill sets? And on and on and on, right? So, do any of those resonate with you? You don't have to raise your hand, just think about it. I know at times they have with me. So, now, after taking that happy trip, let's see if we can talk about opportunities and success factors. Okay, at least how I see them. So, in my experience, again, having been in transition 4 separate times, it's first about positive mental attitude. It's about being authentically engaged and interested. It's about being confident and high energy. Everybody in this room has had senior positions. You've interviewed people. Who are the people you remember interviewing? It isn't the person, well, I did this, I achieved that, I closed this down, I built this up. It's somebody who's talking about with passion what they did and taking pride in how they did it, right? That's what resonates with you, okay? So it's really about attitude. Giving versus taking and matching. I mean, people know Aaron Brooks, he's a big fan of that. That's a give and take book, but I mean, paying it forward. There's a lot of people in this room I know pay it forward. And it does come back. It really does. And networking, like you're doing today. Being supportive. And, you know, so, and finally, my definition of branding. My definition of branding is where talent, passion, accomplishments, and what's the last one? I forgot the last one. Possession, values, and accomplishments intersect. Talents, passions, value, and accomplishments intersect. That's right. Think about that for a second as you're exploring, looking at things, evaluating things. Because that's really how you're going to differentiate yourself and get to the right fit. Because it's a two-way street. A lot of us, other times, have gone into things and I'm saying, what am I doing here? Because I didn't do my homework. I didn't do my internal homework, right? One other axiom I'll leave you with before we leave this place in terms of success factors. When you're networking, never ever put a person in a position where they can't help you. Think about how you feel if you're meeting with somebody and you feel you can't help them. It's a bad feeling. You're associating negative feelings with that person and you're going to be really hesitant to reach out and connect with that person. Always make sure in any meeting you're with, figure out some way that they can give you input so they feel they've been helpful. All right? So that's, I think, a really important aspect in terms of success. It's simple, but it's something you need to really pay attention to. And as I'm going through this, any questions or anecdotes, I'm certainly open to. So let's talk about change, specifically career transitions. You know, change, even if it's desired and needed, is tough. We're not built for change, even though it can be healthy for us. I love this quote from Bernard Shaw. Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. Right? But it's difficult. And the other thing I will tell you, unless you're a psychotic, and I don't want to get personal here, Sophia, just keep that to yourself, you're one person. So when somebody talks about a career transition, it's a life transition. Something's going on in your life that's changing. You can't just isolate it. It affects all elements of your life, and probably some of you have experienced that. Home life's going to be a little different. So just understand those anomalies. And change affects us to different degrees. I'm going to imagine in this room, there's a lot of people that have been the restructurer, and those that have been restructured out. You've been on both sides of the fence. There's feelings and emotion that go with both sides, right? And it's just being aware of that. That's change. It's one of the most challenging things that happens in your life. Big couple career transition changes, moving, death of a loved one, marriage, divorce. These are key things. You need to understand and respect that. And as a result, you really need to seek out people that can be supportive to you. All right? Be it friends, trusted colleagues, professionals, and the like. Yeah?
What kind of support should you seek? You say reach out to people for support.
So, thanks.
Because you're kind of in a vulnerable position.
Yeah. Can everybody hear that question, by the way? Okay. I'll repeat it. So, what type of people?
And what do you ask them for? What kind of help do you ask them for?
First and foremost, ask for people that you trust. People that you trust aren't going to judge you, that they accept you so you feel comfortable with them, number one. There's different types of help. What you may go to a family member for, you know, somebody who's an artist is very different than somebody you know who's a CPA, for example. But the themes are the same. Some empathy, not pity. I will tell you, somebody is saying, oh, that's really terrible, being victimized. That's not helpful, in my view. You want somebody that acknowledges it, understands, validates how you're feeling, encourages you, advocates for you, somebody you can bounce things off of, and they'll be honest with you. Like, that's a really stupid idea. They may not say it that way, but you want honest feedback, okay? I think that's generally, and, you know, there's always the professional side, but you want to round that out a little bit. And you want to be with people that you can really be yourself. These are difficult times. Even at your transition, I've been in these where, you know, the company sold, or the downsizing. There's still something in you, we'll talk about a little bit, that you take personally. Like, am I good enough? It's very common. Let me ask a question. How many people, raise your hand, how many people are really comfortable receiving compliments? Raise your hand. Good for you. Most aren't. Because, go through the thought process. Well, if they really knew, or I knew I could have done better, or I'm not sure, there's a whole host of reasons why we are awkward in receiving compliments. We'll talk about that a little bit. But you want people that you can feel comfortable opening yourself up to. Okay. And it's a good segue into a coach. External coach can really be one that helps with that. You know, serious issues, I mean, there's therapy, there's coaching, there's advisors. You know, and I think you need all three. Does that help? John?
One thing that when I'm talking to people in transition, I always tell folks, you know, you have a bunch of support networks out there. There are healthy support networks, and then there are very unhealthy support networks. And just be cognizant of those folks who think they're being very supportive in your transition, but actually they're not. They're actually putting more pressure on you, making you feel worse. Doesn't mean you throw them to the side, but make sure you understand you have to set limits with those folks, especially when you're in transition.
Great point, yeah. The last thing you need is more, you know, looking for work and pressuring up. And you don't want somebody putting that, you don't want anybody shaming you or guilting you. Right. And that's where you got to be really careful with that, okay? Thank you. Thanks, John. So, in the segue about coaching, which is one of the elements we can talk about. So, what is an executive coach? Well, first I want to ask a question. How many people in the room have had executive coaches? Good. Can you, anybody throw out a few benefits they received that they felt that was provided to them by their coach?
Accountability.
Accountability, yeah. Anybody else?
Self-awareness.
Yeah. Self-awareness, thank you. Stealing my presentation.
Yeah, you see a different way of looking at the world.
Different perspective.
Good. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Counsel and advice.
Counsel and advice. So, a lot of what you're saying really encompasses a lot of that. And, you know, I don't know if I read directly off this slide, but I do want to read this last point, because I think it's really important. At least it speaks to how I approach coaching and advising life. Through training, experience, and empathy. It isn't just training. There has to be experience to that empathy. An executive coach listens to, facilitates, and guides executives to higher levels of productivity and personal fulfillment. Again, productivity and personal, you're a whole person, right? It's both your personal life and your business life. And again, there's nothing in here about therapy, there's nothing in here about advising, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Well, actually, we'll talk about it now. In my view, except for certain engagements, as a coach, I don't advise. When you advise, you change the dynamic of the relationship. If I tell you, well, I think you should do X, every time we have a conversation now, you're going to think, well, he's the expert. He's going to judge what I'm saying. That really cuts off the open dialogue and trust. So I don't give advice. After somebody discloses some of their thoughts, I might say, here's some of my experiences, but I do not give advice. Because I believe all the answers are within you. All the answers are within you. And it's about you bringing it into your awareness where you will feel empowered to act. Again, it's about you bringing everything you need into your awareness so you are able to act. Okay? That's key. So again, every different coach has a different philosophy. For mine is you're an advocate, you're a supporter, non-judgmental. Many things I want to answer your question about what you need. That's really what a coach does. But to Vince's point, it's about accountability and it's about moving forward. And there's where some of the difference is. Yeah, Dan?
Quick question. I'm guessing the answer is there's a combination of this, but is the traditional, and maybe some of the folks that have used coaches and you know, is it for a certain period of time, or do a lot of the people that have used coaches continue to meet with them for years, or how is that relationship
I'll speak with them,
happened
yeah,
and, you
yeah.
know,
So I'll speak, but please, with experiences grow up. So typical coaching assignment, at least for us, in my experience, has been 6 months at assignment, because there's usually a couple things to work on. And in that 6 months, you're building relationship, trust, awareness, then you start to move forward, execute, accountable, muscle memory, and the like. So 6 months is typically the case. Sometimes you'll continue on if there's a relationship and say, hey, you know, we worked on this, there's a few other things I want to do. You might extend it. The coaching years and years, I've heard, I haven't experienced that, so I can't speak, but I've heard both sides of the coin. The obvious is, he knows me like a glove, you know, I can go to him and he really pushes back. If anybody else has, what I've heard more often is, you know, it's getting kind of flat. You know, he's not as hard on me as he used to in terms of accountability. It's almost like we're friends and I need more of a coach. That's kind of what I've heard. But does anybody else have experience with long-term coaching relationships? That's only what I've heard, because I've asked.
2 years. I usually coach for a couple of years, and I know guys who have used coaches for 10+ years. But I think it gets to that point where it runs its course.
They're probably different for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, John. Thanks. Great. Any other questions? Again, you know, you're going to own what you come up with. That's the power of it. You know, I tell you, well, you should do this. Well, Ron told me to do this. It's yourself telling you to do it. Then it's your idea. You're empowered. You own it. So here's a couple of just people have heard of Fortune magazine, Harvard Business Review, and all this. And here's some quotes that you could, you know, some thoughts you could see. But I want to focus on the first quote and the second sentence, which is, it's helping them to learn rather than teaching them. It's helping them to learn. Now there's a saying, what's the saying? It's, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man how to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. I want to take that to the next level. The next level is teaching yourself. I think that's the most powerful way to learn. Okay? Because you're learning in your own way. You'll be empowered by it. You'll be passionate, and to Vince's point, you'll be willing to be accountable. So where do we start? So we kind of teed it up a little bit. And what I'm going to talk about here primarily is going to apply both to in-transition executives as well as in-role. It's the same principles. Okay? Whether it's career coaching, whether it's in-transition coaching, outplacement, in-role, a lot of the same parameters apply. So where do we start? Well, you can read some of these questions. They're pretty broad, but it's really getting to maybe think about yourself in ways you haven't thought about yourself before. Somebody talked about different perspectives, like John did. This one right here. Everybody read that? So when I was looking for my next CFO or CEO role, I went to see Scott Robinson. Some people might know Scott from Kensington. He's got his firm down in Naperville. And I networked with him as a search guy because he's one of the few, including John and some others, a couple of handful of search guys that are worth talking to. The rest of them we can talk about later. But you probably know what I'm talking about. I didn't include Stephanie in that, by the way, so everybody's... So, don't piss off the sponsors. Okay. But no, I went to see Scott, and I really went to network with him more in terms of, hey, Scott, you know, we work together. I'm looking for the next role. Just so you know, blah 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 blah. Well, he knew my background. He knew me. He knew the work I've been doing for almost the past 10 years philanthropically in terms of facilitating and coaching. I can get into that later with other people. And at the end of the conversation, you know, Ron, you could look for this next CFO role or CEO role, but I think you really need to come to my firm as an executive coach. Now keep in mind, at that time, you had like 3-4 people, mostly in search. I'd be his first coach hire. And I was flattered. I said, well, gee, you know, how did you come to that conclusion? And we talked about it. And then I left and I came home. Well, what would that be? That'd be a big change, right? Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to commercialize something I've done philanthropically, that's tainting it, I'm going to be a bad person, all the reasons why I shouldn't go down that path. So what did I do? I talked to one of my coaches. And he asked me 2 questions, just 2. The first one, he said, well, Ron, kids are grown and you've fed your family, your family's fed, Are they taken care of? No worries? Yeah. So you fed your family, spent all these years working hard feeding your family. He goes, I go, yeah. Then he says to me, well, what do you want to do now to feed your soul? It hit me right here at the time. He said, took my breath away. And of course I was being defensive. And he knows, so well, you know, when I retire, I want to write fiction novels and teach. And he said, cut the crap. You're not there yet. What are you going to do to feed your soul? And Ron, you don't believe in coincidences, do you? No. So how did it happen that this thing just fell in your lap out of nowhere? 2 weeks later, I joined the firm. So an example of how a coach can get you to really think straight and authentically, okay, and take away all those self-limiting beliefs that we'll get into a little bit. So again, it's about identifying gaps and the like. So what I want to do now is, this might be a good time, I want to do an exercise. And there are two different, you'll see the instructions. It's going to take you about 3 to 5 minutes to do. And then we can, and this is private, by the way. You don't have to share this with anybody. This is for your own benefit and awareness. So why don't we just take a few minutes and do that? We'll pass them around different ways. There's two of them. One's personal on the top, and the other one is professional. Some of you may have done this before, and if you have, extras.
Same one, yeah, it's the same one.
No, different
Oh, it's a different one. Okay.
Pass them two different
My bad,
ones.
sorry.
Meet in the middle.
Professional, what
I
is,
trust you guys to,
what is different?
and when you do this, just come to what comes to your mind. Don't think about it, just feel it, do it. You can do either one first, doesn't matter. No, just feel it. Look at it, take the full perspective in, and then do it relative. And there is no cheating, by the way, because you only cheat yourself, remember? It's not a test, not grading it. This is really for your benefit. So the more genuine, authentic you are in impulse-wise doing it, the better insights you'll get.
So you can have a light balance for you completely dissatisfied.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah. These are just many, there's a myriad of tools that coaches can use to help trigger awareness. So I'm thinking most people should have at least one done. Okay. Another minute. It scared you that much, huh?
We've only got one question.
Do you have one more than personal? Oh, yeah. Oh, there must be more. Somebody that's more personal somewhere. Must be some on this table, right? Yeah. Thank you. You don't have, you guys don't have the personal?
I did.
Just John.
Just me.
He doesn't have the personal.
Thank you.
Everybody else has got two, right? Give it another about 30 seconds. Oftentimes, it's funny, you're hearing things, sometimes when you're going through this, even coaching, people start to chuckle a little bit, and some of that is really reflective of awareness, and sometimes being a little bit awkward with what it is, but that's okay. finding out about yourself can be a little bit scary, but it's kind of rewarding, so. All right, so let's take another 10, 15 seconds and we'll wrap it up. So my question for you is this. Does anybody in the room, and you connected the dots, right? Anybody in the room have a smooth ride? They want to put that on their car? I guess not. It's all about balance. You know, it isn't about everything being at, you know, the 7s or the 9s. It's the fact that it's off balance, right? So this is a tool we use at times to sort of get going in terms of what in your life and career doesn't seem to be working, okay? And that's what we make first focus on. So it's about, you know, touching on those gaps first. It may lead to something, may not, but it's just one of the simple, just one of the more simple tools we use to kind of figure out what that might be, all right? So any thoughts or questions about the exercise? Okay. We'll ask for comments from the kitchen table. So, how do we progress? You know, first and foremost to me, in all this, you know, whether it's an in-role where the company feels the need, or the person who's willing to be coached, or it's a career transition coaching, it's about fit. I can't emphasize that more. It's about fit. I don't care the firm, I don't care the person, I mean, it's about you being able to have a dialogue relationship with that coach, feeling you can do that. And most people, I haven't met a person that if they trust their gut, they meet somebody, you know, I meet Mark and it's like, I meet John, I mean, John here, yeah. It isn't that. Thanks, Ron. Anytime. I owe him. No, but it isn't like these guys are bad. It doesn't fit. I had somebody ask me, you know, I prefer a female coach. I can't do that. I didn't feel bad about that. I could, but I don't want to do it. Not for one occasion. So, you know, it's about fit. So I can't emphasize that more. And we talked about this earlier when you asked, again, the question at the very beginning. It's about the coach being a trusted advocate. You know, someone who's going to listen, guide, and support you without judgment. That's key. You will not open up and find out about yourself and really address what's in your way if you don't trust the person you're with. Okay? And so that's why that's critically important. It's also about meeting you where you're at. I think a lot of people make assumptions. Oh, you're this, so you must be here. When I don't know where you are, where you've come from, what you're facing. Let's figure out where that is, so where you're at, and we work from there. Okay. So, does this sound exciting? It does to me, but now I'm passionate about it. So, just so you know that to really move forward sustainably, you may face some challenges. And some of you head coaches probably already know this, and you've been through some of this already. So to get the most out of this process, you know, you're going to really, and moving forward sustainably, you're going to, again, have to typically go deeper. I call it going deeper, to a place that you may not be very comfortable doing, okay? So let's talk about, again, what challenges you might face in both your personal and professional life. Again, there might be psychotics in the room, but I'm going to ignore that for the moment. Did anybody see the movie Twins? Remember the movie Twins? Arnold Schwarzenegger? Given to, you know the whole story, given to idyllic parents, idyllic island, no mean kids, utopia. Perfect, and then there was Danny DeVito at the other end, right? I don't think any of us are in any of those polar places, but we're somewhere in the middle. We've grown up, intentionally and unintentionally, we have experiences that have shaped us and have created self-limiting beliefs. We all have them to some extent. I'd love to debate anybody who thinks differently. We all do, okay? Like the negative thoughts I talked about earlier. And it probably comes as no surprise to you that self-limiting beliefs and negative thoughts become more pronounced in times of stress. And we've talked about being in transition is one of the most stressful things in your life. Okay, so just put those together. Now, that leads to our second and final, I won't bore you with other, but final exercise. And again, it talks about challenges and creating awareness of where those might be. So this is one handout. I'm going to give you about a few minutes to do this. Do it from your gut, and then we can, let me know if I fall short talking about it. This will be pretty. And you'll start to see how these things fit together. There's many tools that coaches can use. These are just a few. There's a simpler ones that we can really do. You were here. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Yeah. That's why. Thanks. And again, just do gut. Nobody else is going to see this, so don't make this like what I would like people to, what I'd like to see me, or what I'd like others to see. How do you really authentically see yourself in these sort of block situations? Be authentic. They're a little more difficult than the wheels. Again, the first answer is probably the best answer. Give another minute. Are you just starting, Dan? Or somebody? Yeah,
Dan did not
I
come
share
prepared
my
with
pen
everything.
first.
Some were well prepared. Wow.
No deal.
I won't mention who.
Yeah, why not shame some? That'd be fun.
We're here to help.
So, wrap up another about 10 seconds or so. And again, these are for you to keep. By the way, oftentimes these tools we use them at the beginning and at different stages to see where things are. You know, did the wheels smooth out? Did some of the high marks come down?
That's right. I was going to compare this to
Yeah.
my meat scores.
See, there you go. See, very good, yeah. But I mean, think about these. Some of these obviously must resonate with you. It almost has to. How'd you feel when you saw that? Oh, that's embarrassing. Wow, yeah, you know. You know what? We're all human. And that awareness is what's going to be the power to move forward. Okay, so you and only you know the answers to these questions. Somebody's not going to come in and tell you how you feel. They're not going to tell you, even a therapist. You got to figure out where, you know, where mom and dad destroyed you when you were a kid and dig deep down, right? But you know these answers. It's all within you. Okay? So a coach helps you to access and bring these to your awareness and then through action. It's through action that you can move through and forward. Again, this is important. It's through action that you can move through and forward. Coaching engagements, it involves, as Vince said, accountability. There's specific, you call them smarts, whatever you want to call them, there's specific measurable things you do to reinforce and muscle memory the things you need to work on. It isn't just like when you're working, oh, I got my business goals done, but I didn't have time to do my personal goals. I'll do that next year. That's not what this is about. It's integration. Any questions on this exercise? Anybody want to share? Just kidding. I've never seen anyone want to share that. But again, keep that for your own awareness, and hopefully it will be of help to you as you move forward. So, going through this process, you know, what will you achieve? Well, first and foremost, you're going to achieve a greater awareness and self-respect, which is critical to both work life and life in general. Think about that. Greater awareness and greater self-acceptance. Isn't that what we all strive for? I think that's what Maslow's hierarchy means. But you'll be moving forward, it's about moving forward. Coaching is about moving forward. There's coaching, there's therapy, and there's advice. Therapy deals with the past, and it's critically important. If someone is really stuck, you want to really understand it. Coaching complements that and touching upon that awareness. Okay, that happened when you were 6 years old, you're 46 now. Reframe it, move forward. Okay, it's about moving forward. Okay, and advice is a whole different plane. So, any questions so far? So, again, you can read this, but I'm just going to focus on a couple. I mean, the enhanced career planning, which may be relevant to a lot of people in the room here, you know, you're going to develop an action plan that's aligned with you. Remember I talked about branding. Talents, passions, accomplishments, all those intersect. You're going to really figure that out. And you're going to own it. And I've had people, you know, I want to be an author. Yeah, but I got 3 kids in school, that's not practical. Okay, but at least you've defined something, and how do you work backwards? How do you get close to that? And you start to have a process of working down. So you can go to the thing that best fits you. And trust me, if you know where your brand is, and you go and interview with someone that aligns with your brand, people will remember you. See? They agree. So, in terms of next steps, you know, I'll just focus on the first 2. I would ask you to think about someone, including yourself, that feels desire to reach the next level or job sooner versus later. How many of us do not want to do that? Maybe some. This is a word, when I hear this word, I get a number of clients after hearing that word. I'm overwhelmed. And it's a combination of things. It's either they're getting in their own way, it's their team is not doing their job, so they're kind of sucked in and overwhelmed, or it's I've never been in transition, or I'm in this before and I just don't know where to start. So that's a real popular one. On the other side, just as I'll flip over to the corporate side of things, what I tell people very simply is, because when you talk to companies that sponsor enroll coaching, I basically say, you know, I help improve profitability by creating happy and engaged executives. They kind of look at me. What does happy mean? Well, when you're engaged and happy, what do you think that energy provides? And there's studies out there that will tell you that coaching has an average of 711% ROI or something. You know, you name it. There's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. But to the question that you raised earlier, was it Joel or Joel? That's right. Seek out, if you're in transition, even in role, particularly CFO, CEO, they're lonely roles. Sometimes you don't feel comfortable going to your boss or your board or team. When you're in transition, you don't have any of those options anyway. Put together folks, not just a coach, that can really be supportive of you. And that's going to be really important. It's going to help your confidence. You're going to feel connected. And the meetings like this. This is about connection. It's networking, but it's also connection. My sense is most of you, whether you're extroverts or introverts, you feel energized at being with people. I have a home office, an office downtown. Yes?
I should have asked this back when you were talking about selecting your coach. But do you recommend selecting a coach that potentially has worked with other executives at your company or knows your company very well? Or do you recommend working with somebody who really doesn't know much at all about you or your company?
Everybody heard that question? Okay, thank you. I'm going to answer it in kind of a different kind of way. Hold me accountable. First and foremost, coaching is about people. People is industry agnostic. That being said, yes, you know, somebody that can understand the company, I have a bias, somebody can understand the business, somebody can understand the role. I think there's a understanding and empathy and a connection that's important. Those are factors, but I will tell you, again, I'm going to go back to what I said before, being fairly consistent. Because again, I've sat in the seats, I've had coaches. So I'd love to just espouse, you should really take a business person as a coach because they've been there, they've done that way. And I agree with that, but what trumps that entirely is family. If somebody understands your business, understands the politics, whatever it is, and there's not a connection, please don't take that coach. That coach would be great for Sue down the hall and John, but it would not be right for you. And some companies, they bring in a firm and they have coaches, and here's who you're going to use. If you don't feel comfortable, I would speak up, because they're making this investment. Okay, so I think it helps, but it's the fit thing. I was trained. The person's got to know what they're doing, you know. But it really is that piece. It's about the trust. You can learn. I've had several clients I didn't know these businesses, but even more important than business, I started to really understand by interviewing the culture. So that's key. Thank you. Did I answer the question?
Yes.
Other questions as you're going through? So I think I'm supposed to be on for an hour. We're about 20 minutes to the hour. And really this pretty much ends my formal discussion. And so what I'd like to do now is open the floor to just questions, comments, and thoughts. And there's nothing that's, no restrictions. What do you think? I might not answer it. No restrictions. Yes?
Hey, Ron, you said before you started doing this permanent basis, you were doing it on a volunteering basis. What was that?
Thank you. I didn't even pay you for that. So back about 10 years ago, I got involved in a group called Victories of the Heart. You ever heard of that group? Yeah. It's been around since 1985. And there's one for women, but it's really, you have to separate men and women in this sort of work we do. But it's a group that helps men get from their head into their heart, to be more authentic in their feelings and how they approach things, to have deeper, more meaningful relationships in their lives. With business, personal, and alike. And these are weekends. Let me say a couple things first. Whenever somebody says a men's group, a lot of hairs, hackles start coming up. I know this when I raise funds. First one, is this for people that abuse people? I said, what? You know, the first time it just shocked me, and it didn't shock me. It's not denominational. It is not a cult. There's no nudity and beating drums. There are some that do that. I can refer you to those if you like that. It's very clinically based. So I've been trained the last 10 years by therapists, coaches, psychiatrists, psychologists, you name it. I've been trained, and I'm one of the few lay weekend leaders. Okay, so you're on a weekend, you go through processes, and then you continue on in your group for years. I've been with my group for 10 years. Some have been with their group for 85. And it's really about, talk about a group or a posse, like you talk about people that you can really come to. It's about connection. And it's been very rewarding for me. And the key is meeting someone where they're at, not giving advice, and that's how I've been trained. And so that's why Scott, I think, because he knew the training I had, he said, come in. So for those men, sorry, it is one that only men, sorry about that. I know the women's organization, so I can refer. If you have an interest, glad to talk to you about it. It's a not-for-profit. None of us get paid except for the executive director and office manager, but it's all volunteer. We do about 15,000 hours of volunteer work. We hold a number of weekends. We have 3 weekends. Breakthrough. What does that mean? Well, you might want to make a shift when something's blocking you. By example, you know, I feel like I'm really controlling and I want to be more accepting, but I can't get there. Well, you'll figure out why on the weekend and then move forward. Wisdom years. These are for men 50 and older. I hope one day to qualify for that. Quick laughs, thank you. I've been in that weekend. And this one is about how do you live the second half of your adult life authentically. Things are changing. Careers, family, empty nester maybe, marriage, mortality, a whole host of things are going on. It helps you kind of clarify, and the group you meet with helps be accountable in terms of moving forward. The final weekend, a fun one, you have to have attended one of those weekends. It's called the Shadow Weekend. What's the Shadow Weekend? I'll start with a saying. Somebody said to me one time, you spend the first 20 years stuffing things in a bag. Expectations of parents and friends and community, stuff in a bag. We spend the next 20 years trying to pull it out. It's what we call our dark side. Decide you want to hide, decide we're ashamed about. And it's how do you accept that, embrace it, because if you don't embrace it, it's going to come out sideways, it's not going to leave you, and move forward. So those are the three, and there's trainings and other things that go on throughout the year. If anybody's interested in that, I have a few, I always carry a few brochures, not a lot, but I'm glad to share them with you. But I find there's enough people that attend these are actually, a lot of times, are people that are facing change, interestingly enough. Could be job, could be marriage, could be death, a lot of different things, and it's brought up stuff and they want to know how to deal with it. So thank you. Glad to talk about that, and yes, Ms. Vince.
I was gonna say, how often, I'm changing topics, so.
Please, I'm good with that.
How often is too often or not often enough to meet with a coach?
Everybody hear that? Okay. So when I came in with Scott, I said, Scott, for me, I'm a old finance guy, process guy. There needs to be some kind of a process, and I call it a spine. Because everybody's different. But the spine, which in general, in my view, is 6 months. A face-to-face meeting every 3 or 4 weeks, depending on the executive schedule. A check and call in between, and available 24/7. Every 3 weeks to a month. It gives you time to process and do things. I think more often than that. Now I'm going to shift in a second. So I'm focused on enroll now. It does change a bit. It doesn't allow you time to really process and move forward on things. Okay. And we say that the 24/7 is I'm in a crisis, or I think something's going on. Can you help me through it? So we'll take those calls also. And to digress real quickly, an important part of coaching, as you're moving forward, is you're going to try things, and what's going to happen? They're not always going to work, right? You're going to fail. And a real key, the coach helps the coachee, if you will, is how to treat that failure. The key is to treat it as a learning experience, not a reflection on who they are. So in other words, that situation was a failure, not I'm a failure. Okay, when you get to that point, you can really grow. But I'm saying every 3 or 4 weeks, with a check-in call, like an hour meeting, hour and a half face-to-face, if it's out of town, sometimes Skype. And a check-in call, half hour, what's going on, how things going, and then finally, 24/7. Now, that's enroll. In career coaching, as you said, it could be a little more often, particularly on the front side. I do, for me, there are some that it's a 6-month deal. I do 3. I do 3 for 2 reasons. One is, I don't think you want to wait 6 months. I think you want to, faster the better. If you're willing to work hard, I'm willing to work hard. And so you'll start maybe weekly, first off, and then you might roll to less at that point. But it's about getting that moving. So it depends on the circumstance. But typically 3 or 4 weeks enroll in a career type transition sort of thing. Might be once a week for a while and then kind of taper off from there. Does that answer? Yeah.
Yeah. Group. Do you do groups?
Great question. We facilitate groups. We do not coach groups. I don't think there's such a thing as coaching groups. The thing you filled out on the blocks, you want to share that with your colleagues at work? Probably not. So we facilitate groups to figure out, and we can share the CEO, John's speaking up all the time, and Don, I could tell he's just sitting there wanting to say something, and he's not. And so there might be individual coaching in terms of John being sensitive to open up and Don being more confident to move forward. So you facilitate groups, but you coach individually. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So you've been doing this professionally now, outside of your volunteer for a little while now.
Yeah.
And when you were in your transition, you went to your coach and he kind of gave you an eye-opener and you jumped into this. Do you still speak to that guy
Sure do.
after
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, you know, yes, and thanks for asking.
He's
I
not
think,
an enemy?
John, somebody asked me, you know, how long coaching has been or whatever. I said he was one of my coaches. And I hadn't used him in a while. He's a great coach, but I didn't, there wasn't the need, and you know, we went to the place we needed to go. But he was somebody that I reached back out to. So call her a former coach. And by the way, with the people that are clients of mine, and there are some in this organization that have been, I kind of joke and say, okay, this is the last man, I guess we can't talk anymore. Unless you sign another contract or something. That's not what it's about. You know, I really enjoy making the lifelong connections and having a conversation on and off. So thanks for raising that, because again, the coach I talked with, feeding my soul, was not my coach. Well, was, but I felt he was a guy, because I knew him, I just in my head knew, he's the guy I wanted to reach out to and talk to, and it was the right choice. Yes?
So with the CFO, CEO, you know, you were responsible for presumably fairly sizable teams, you know, kind of leadership role. This current role is much more kind of a individual contributor role. Do you miss the kind of the day-to-day of responsibility for a team and organization?
You know, me personally, no. And I'll tell you why. I really enjoyed building teams and having them, you know, forward and profits and growth and value and all that. But what I see now, more than I saw then, and maybe this resonates with people at this stage of life, is the personal growth, the one-on-one. When I see somebody come into awareness. 2 weeks ago, from a former client, I got a 2-page handwritten letter about what I did for her. And I had to respond. My penmanship stinks. I emailed her back and I said, it's what you did for you. Those are the jewels. It's much more direct impact for me. And I think the analogy I'd make is there's people here who probably work for public companies and private companies. They both have their pros and cons. But I often hear people go, you know, I've been public, but I really enjoyed my stint at the smaller company because it had more of an impact. I saw that. And I've seen that. This is the pivotal one. This is a person, a human being. So for me, now, I like to be around a lot of people. Like I've sensed, I'm an extrovert. I'm not, and so when there you go. I spoke about the internet CPAs today. That's a whole different. So we'll talk about that. But for me, I have to be around people. So my wife laughs when I'm home officing in Deerfield. I go to Starbucks a lot. I meet people there too. I'm around all people, so I can be doing my work, but it's the energy. So I fill it in that way. But I really enjoy the one-on-one and making a difference, one person at a time. And by the way, there's ripple effects to that. Think about, have you ever had a crappy boss? Oh, come on. People leave their jobs because of their boss. So what ripple effects when somebody has awareness? So think about that. You threw a pebble in the pond. So that's the other piece. John.
Yeah, they're going to lead into my question. So let's say, you know, we land a new position, or maybe we accept a position on the board, and you find maybe that CEO or the executive director, they're brilliant in many ways, but they got some blind spots, and you use the term crappy boss, and usually it's crappy because of something on the people skill side. And you think, boy, that person could.
So is your question, how do you bring that to
can walk up to him and say, hey, you know, coach would be really good for you.
So here's what you do. Believe me, I've been asked that question. You don't make it about the CEO. You make it about you. In other words, if I said that, you know, you're talking in a very rude manner. When I do that, you're talking. You get defensive. Wait a minute, I'm not talking like that. If I was to say to you, you know, John, when you talk to it, I feel a bit threatened. That's a different message, right? You can't debate how I feel, but if I put it on him, he could argue that. Mr. CEO, you know, I'm coming in here and I really want to be the best I can be in the team. You know, I've worked with this, I know this, I'd really like to bring this in and try this and see if this is something that might help the team. You don't ever, you probably know this, I mean, you wouldn't, I think you suck, you need a coach now. Does that, yeah, you gotta make it about you or the broader team when you're raising something like that up.
Or maybe express concern for that person.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I was gonna mention, I thought you were going down a different path. The other thing is, you're in transition, then you're in job. There's transition into a job, and then there's a growth. So there's a lot of ways that coaches can help you. You know, land, okay, now what? I remember when I was placed by a large search firm into Exelon, and they talked about this, you know, 3-month onboarding program. And it consisted of 3 weeks. How's it going on? Great, call you in 3 weeks. Click. That was the onboarding. You need more than that. John, you get it.
Absolutely.
So onboarding, enroll, all different stages. Coaches and advisors can help you with that. Okay, this was great. Other questions?
Yeah, well, no, so you're meeting with a prospect, and you're trying to determine if they're going to be somebody good to coach or not. You know, there's always like, you know, there's people who sign up for the gym, and there's those who show up and those who don't. So how do you determine if somebody's going to be coachable or not?
You can usually determine that pretty much up front. The easiest way is when a company has you come in, you do like a 360. Probably everybody's done the LAAs, or I'm certified giving that too. And the person sees how they see themselves, others see themselves, and if they start to say, no, they got it wrong, they don't get it, they don't get it, they don't get it, that's a sign that they're not ready, okay? The other is, and I've taken on a few personal clients, and I'll discount them because, again, the company's not paying, I'm sensitive to that, but they have to really be sort of aware, maybe not the specific need, but the desire, you know, I know I can do, but I've been frustrated, I'm really stuck in it, I don't know what it's, but I know it's going to be hard, but I want to move forward. You get a sense, of that, but it's the person that's in denial, the person that's trying to justify away that stuff, as opposed to, and you know, I try to tell people, fixing is such a bad word. It's about getting better. It's about moving forward. It's about improving. It isn't this fixing. Tiger Woods has a coach, for God's sakes. Well, in golfing, probably a coach for something else, but that's different. And then, but you know, Jeff Elmo, you know, you talk to anybody, these people are world-class people, they all have coaches. Why? They need somebody independent to talk to and vent, and they also know that they need to grow and things change. I had a situation, real quick, guy comes in to an organization, industry knowledge, somebody talking industry, business, knows everything, knows people, great, managed up beautifully. He came in with this command control approach, which is very successful for him in his prior company, but not in this one. But they wanted to sort of shave it a little bit and acclimate better. So sometimes it's just acclimating sort of thing. But yeah, you can tell when somebody's in denial, that's the part that gets me a little bit nervous. And we won't take the client. I mean, Scott and I are the same, no, you know, life's too short, time's important, and you invest emotionally into it. You don't want, if somebody's HR person came to, I think it was Scott, well, you know, in my MBOs, I've got to coach my teams, and you go to the team, well, what do you see? Oh, no, just to have to check a box, right? We're not going to do that. You know, it's got to be, there's got to be a need, sense of urgency. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, in the back, I saw you.
Do you have any thoughts in general on how to prioritize your time in transition?
That's a, yeah, I mean, part of it, yeah, I mean, you start from the goal and you work backward. That's a long, that can be a long answer, but, you know, always with the goal in mind. I want the next job. I'm just being a little simple here because we're running a lot of time. Prioritize against that. You know, playing a game on the computer isn't going to get you the job. So that's the extreme. Get an interview, will. I work back. Well, what do I do to get the interview? And you start to do that. There's all different things about different balance of times. But you know, to me, if I did just tell you, it's about connecting. It's about face-to-face. It's about networking. I can't tell how many people are here. Oh, I do. I applied to 6 jobs online today. Worthless. I'm sorry, it's worthless. It's about networking. So prioritize. You can put all the stuff together, your elevator speech, how you present, and your resume, that's fine. But it's about connecting. Use LinkedIn, use social media, all those sort of things. You'll fall into it. And by the way, being in groups, there's some groups, like, John heads up a group, and they share about best practices and what works and doesn't work, and people get a feel and support each other in terms of where they need to balance. Does that help? I mean, it'd be a longer answer. And sometimes it's very specific in terms of the person.
You said it, through your actions, you can move forward. It's about action. Take
About
action.
actions. Yeah, thank you.
You said that.
You listen and you
I'm
touched. I'm touched. Now I'm just flummoxed. I can't say anything more. Thank you. But that's it. It's action. Although action, applying online to it is that, but it's not action. It's about connection. It's about connection. Questions or thoughts? Yeah.
On one of your slides, you said bringing everything into awareness. Can you kind of disassemble everything and give us some idea of what's included in everything?
I guess I can only give you examples. And how do I'm trying to, it's got to be very confident. I don't share it, but I'm going to share a client experience, but I'm trying to figure out how to just genericize it, whatever the word is. So somebody is presenting something to the CEO, CFO. And CEO is not a finance guy. And he starts to ask some questions. And the CFO came from a larger company where he had resources, and now he's sitting in a smaller company, he doesn't, so he couldn't get all his I's dotted and T's crossed. He came with incomplete information. And so when the CEO started to question things he didn't have the answers for, didn't feel he was prepared, he backed off and just said, oh, never mind. What happened eventually is they hired another CFO. And he came to me and he said, very frightened, and didn't understand, and he kind of figured, he wasn't even sure why he was doing it. When he told me this pattern, I just switched roles. I said, you be the CEO, I'll be the CFO, and I did, he kind of looked at me and goes, yeah, he probably didn't have confidence in me or trust me, or maybe he doesn't even think I know what I'm doing. I said, okay, maybe that's the case. Level of awareness, right? Didn't realize. And the other might be, well, what brought that up? What makes you back off when somebody's asking questions? And if you touch back, I won't go into it, but it was this person as a kid had significant issues with bullies, as it turns out. Connecting the dots. He was aware that he was acting a certain way because of what happened way back when. So there's a pathway to work through that, and awareness of the impact that his actions had on others. Does that make sense to you? And it's a very small example, it's one I can think off the top of my head, but it's about awareness. Sometimes we aren't aware of the impact we have on people or what we're portraying, and sometimes we don't know what's behind it. And so it's those sorts of things. But it starts from the goal. It's, when you have these gaps, so whether it's your wheel or whether it's blocks or specific goals at work, be more communicative, engage your team, whatever the goals are, you're usually looking at things against that. And that's where these sort of things come up. Does that make sense? But again, this doesn't happen in 3 minutes. And somebody's going to say to me, well, I think it's because I've been insecure about being bullied, so I feel like when somebody questions me, I'm bullied. That's not something that somebody's going to say to you after a 5-minute conversation. It takes time building trust, and then when they see that, and then people see that he can now, and you can tell when he got the away, he kind of sat up straighter and said, so I said, well, how are you going to do this now? And actually, he came up with his own solution. I'm going to go to see the CEO, and if he questions me, say, you know what? I really believe in this for these reasons. I don't have all the facts, but I believe we can invest and get all these facts, and I'd like to do that if that's okay with you. He thought about this, and then he was actually excited to go back. He said, I got a couple I'm going to bring right back up and talk to him about it. So he was really energized and excited about it. The power of awareness, your own awareness. That make sense? Anything else? Oh, boy, you're going to kick me off. I'm almost done. Well, I want to thank everybody, and I'll be here around a little bit longer if anybody wants to further discuss. But thank you for being so attentive and participative. We appreciate it.